Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out the radio version of the show every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on WDJY 99.1 in Atlanta. We also air on a podcasting network in Los Angeles called the 405 Media. There's a TV version of the show that airs on KMVT 15 in Silicon Valley at 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday nights. Both versions of the show air in other states. For these show times, plus past episodes, please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com. I want to invite all of you in the Building the Future community to join me at SUPEX, the Startup Expo in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, this July 26th, where I'll be the MC. SUPEX is one of the largest and best startup conferences in the U.S. and the official gathering of the Building the Future community this summer. SUPEX has cutting-edge content, a cool startup competition, and a half-day forum this year called #WomenForWomen, the largest gathering in the U.S. in 2018 of angel groups, seed funds, and VC funds focused on female founders and female entrepreneurs. For more information, visit www.sup-x.org. I hope to see all my Building the Future friends there. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Bob Fitz. He's the founder and producer of SUPEX, the Startup Expo. Bob, welcome back to the show.
Kevin, it's always fun to be on the show. I think this is my second or third time in the past 3 years or so.
Yeah, and you even guest hosted one where you interviewed me for the 100th episode a couple years back, so that was pretty cool too.
I remember it well. Thank you for the opportunity. That was fun. How many shows are you up to now?
240 some. I just posted 45. I think I posted today, and there's a few more recorded that I still have to kind of edit and get up online. So
250 almost. That's crazy.
I know. Considering we met on LinkedIn, I remember it. I was working a booth at a trade show for the startup I was working at, and I remember I think I got your connection request on LinkedIn, and then I was literally like, "Hey man, I'm launching this radio show. Do you want to be a guest?" And you were like, "Absolutely." And then you were like, "Do you want to come down to SUPEX?" A few months later, and I came down and we met in person, and we've been kind of doing things together ever since. So kind of a wild, LinkedIn has brought me a lot of the things I've gotten kind of in my career. It sounds like you the same.
Yeah, I'm a LinkedIn fan.
Totally.
I have gobs and gobs of LinkedIn contacts, and it helps me all the time.
Sure. So maybe before we kind of get into everything we're going to talk about today, for people that don't know you or not connected with you on LinkedIn, because you have a ton of LinkedIn connections, let's get to know you a little bit better and maybe start off with where you grew up.
Yeah, so I was a corporate brat. Everybody's heard of military brats, but I was a corporate brat, meaning that, my dad worked for some good-sized corporations, and when he got transferred, we moved. So I actually was born in Los Angeles, believe it or not. My young 60s parents went out to LA from Tennessee to see the big city, and evidently I was produced and created there. And we only stayed about 6 months, evidently, and moved back to Tennessee. And my father worked for AC Nielsen, the marketing research company, and then decided to get his PhD. We moved to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. That led to his first job after his dissertation, and that was in Birmingham, Alabama. And then they transferred him to Birmingham, Michigan, which is a Detroit suburb. I went to high school in Birmingham, Michigan, and Birmingham Seahome, if there's any Seahome listeners. And then they got transferred to the headquarters, which was in Atlanta. And I was really there just in the summers. At that point, I had gone off to college, and I was in college in Virginia. And then I got out of college, and
so what did you take in college, just out of curiosity?
Well, beer. I wasn't a really good student. I was on the half decade program, and I was a history major, and my only saving grace at all was I was really involved. Ran a ton of committees and stuff like that, and so I got a lot of good experience doing that. But I was a pretty mediocre student, to be honest. So out of college, the employers weren't pounding my door down, and I got a job as a paralegal in a huge law firm, and it kind of woke me up and made me realize that I needed to get my stuff together. That with an infamous lecture from a close friend of mine kind of made me decide that it was time to grow up. And then I set my eyes on really business school, went off to Washington, D.C. after living in Richmond, Virginia for a while, and went to George Washington University, got my MBA at night while I continued to work as a paralegal and then as an analyst for a small muni bond investment bank. And then I got the job that kind of transformed my career. I got a job working for a Goldman Sachs subsidiary in the real estate crisis in the late 80s and early 90s. And it was an amazing experience. It was incredibly hard work, insane hours, but we were growing like crazy, and they just kept throwing opportunities at you. And if you were just willing to hustle and, kind of be a slave to your job, there was all kinds of amazing things could happen. And I got to go to Paris and help start a sister company there. And
Very
it was,
cool.
that was the job that really changed my career. And I got back from that. By this point, I was in Dallas and got back from that. And a friend from business school was helping Prudential Financial start a commercial mortgage lending subsidiary. And I was single and living in Texas and had just finished my MBA up. And I thought, what the heck, I really, because of my outstanding undergraduate grades, I really didn't have a chance to break into the New York kind of market right out of college. And I was like, let's just go give it a whirl and see what happens. So at age 31, 32, I moved to Manhattan, got a job for Prudential Financial as I think I was a vice president or something like that, and helped build a business for them. And then, and we were doing specialty finance, and I got tired of doing repetitive kind of structured finance. And so I'd always wanted to run a business, and I stayed with the same firm, but we got a new CEO, and I became effectively the chief of staff, and we started buying companies. And so I kind of got into M&A at that time and started leading integrations, and that was fun. And went to a sister company at Prudential and kept doing that. And we bought a company in Germany. And so I got to go do these cool integration projects for all these acquisitions. And I was kind of the guy a lot of my career that, because I was eager, when something needed getting figured out, I'd always raise my hand. And I just did that repeatedly.
That's
and
awesome.
it led to amazing experiences. And the aggregate of all those experiences, at some point, I had accumulated enough varied experience in operations and finance that I became a chief operating officer for a pretty good sized business unit of Prudential that was a quarter of $1 billion a year business.
Wow.
And it was a good run there. And then I decided I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial and left in 2005 to help start a resort community development business, and became a real estate developer for a while, and until the big crash happened in '08 and
Sure.
essentially wiped us out and wiped a lot of people out too.
Yep.
And so that was my exit from the development business, and I started a consulting business. And to make an already long story short,
Oh, no, that's good.
I started there's actually a startup analogy here. I started that business to take advantage of the real estate collapse and threw a ton of money into marketing and ended up pushing on a string for 2 years. And so I really didn't know what I was going to do. And
Okay.
a friend of mine out of happenstance called me and said, look, I need help with my business. And his business is cleaning concrete floors for big box retailers, something I knew nothing about. But I hadn't seen this guy in years, and he was one of my best friends from high school, and we'd lost touch. And I flew out to Detroit and saw him and took a look at his business and kind of helped him come up with an idea that we'd create a new branded service business for him, et cetera. And it was a huge margin business, and it really worked and took off and transformed his business. And then he introduced me to a supplier, and I helped the guy rebuild his distribution chain. And within a matter of time, my original business idea got shelved, and I started doing kind of small business management consulting, and the irony is I was consulting, doing a lot of stuff that I really had little experience with, but because I had been in large institutional environments, I had more, I guess, analytical abilities in some areas that I had no formal experience in than I thought. And it was surprising to me, and it enabled me to really counsel businesses on a variety of subjects. That, along with some decent research instincts and the humility to ask people when you don't know stuff. And started doing small business management consulting, and I've been doing it ever since. The SUPEX story is a different story, and I'm happy to tell it as well if you'd like.
No, I think that's probably a great transition to getting into that, because I think a lot of people, as you know, it's a ton of work putting on your own kind of conference. But how did SUPEX become a thing, and what made you kind of decide to actually get it up and going?
Well, I guess if you listen to the first part of that story and you hear this, you don't understand how they tie together, and I'll explain it. But
Sure.
It is a lot of listeners, a lot of people feel a lot of pressure that they have to know what they're going to be when they grow up. And the answer is you don't.
Sure.
But what you do have to do is always try your best at whatever you're doing and amalgamate the best and broadest set of skills that you possibly can, or know one skill better than anybody. And
Sure.
you kind of got to figure out which one of those you were going to be. And I was the former and not the latter. But anyway, I moved to Florida, and I really didn't know anybody here. And my brothers had always been in tech startups. And as you'd heard from my background, I was kind of in the investment management space and the finance space. And my brothers said, check out some angel group meetings, et cetera. So I started going to some angel meetings and some other tech startup oriented meetings. And I came across an organization about an hour from my house that called the Gold Coast Venture Capital Association.
Okay.
And its mission was to bring together investors, entrepreneurs, and service providers and provide some interesting content for them to mix and mingle and learn. And it was kind of an old guy supper club when I got involved with it. They had
Okay.
a really tired business model, and I'm sure some listeners have seen this before, and probably in years past. But you'd show up for a networking event, and you'd network for about an hour, and then you'd sit down to a dinner, and at a big 8 round, sat 8 people, and then you'd listen to somebody give a presentation for an hour, and then you could network a little bit afterwards or leave. And so it was, there was occasionally some interesting people either pitching or giving a presentation about something, but the model was kind of slow and old. I mean,
Sure.
and expensive. But so because there was a dinner involved, it was $65 or something like that for
Oh, wow.
non-members. Yeah, and so it's not, cheap.
Not cheap,
And then and then the quality of your experience is somewhat limited to how interesting the two people are you're sitting next to at dinner, right?
Yeah,
'Cause
fair.
you can't talk to the person across the table from you realistically. So I got involved in the organization, and was seeing it die before my eyes, and I knew no one down here. So I was trying to find organizations I could get on the board of that wasn't going to be like a big pay to play experience where you had to pay $5,000 to join the board or something. I was looking for a reputable organization that was relatively inexpensive to get on the board, that I could go to work making an impact. And the premise was, in doing so, other board members would notice my skills, and maybe I'd get hired for some of my consulting. Sounds
Sure.
like a pretty logical strategy, right?
Yeah.
It never worked. But sounds
Okay.
logical. But in the meantime, I thought it was very logical. But it was logical, but it didn't happen. But anyway, I got involved in the organization, and in order to prevent it from dying, first thing I did was change the business model. And two things that we did was they were charging startups to pitch, which of course meant that the pipeline was awful
Sure.
because they weren't, well, it wouldn't have been so bad if they had been a real angel group that had a fund and were stroking checks. Like
Right.
the Kairetsu model is somewhat like that. I know that's an oversimplification for any Kairetsu people listening, but they weren't cutting checks. They were just providing a vehicle for people to pitch, and then if something happened afterwards, it was kind of its own. So of course their pipeline was terrible. And then secondly, that dinner model I told you about was kind of old and boring and inexpensive. So the first thing we did was we dropped the fee to pitch. And then secondly, we got rid of the dinner. And so all we do is just show up, network, and then go straight in and have a reception, and then go straight into whatever the activity was. And then, basically we just have heavy hors d'oeuvres. And so we dropped the price. Like then events came like $25.
Yeah.
And then we moved them. We were in a hotel, and we started also, and the hotel was a great central meeting place, but we started slowly moving around. Okay, occasionally we'll go to a co-work space, and we started moving around. And so, and then the other thing is, and that was helping. And we got a new website. We hired somebody, a graphic designer, and did a new logo and put in a new CRM's kind of a fancy way of saying a very small management system for the little membership we had, but it sounds much more impressive if I say we implemented a new CRM, but
Sure.
But it really wasn't that complicated. But anyway, we did these things, but we still needed to make an impact. Like I wanted to do something big. So I got this idea that what we would do was we'd create this expo, and I went all over the state to these other events, and I tried to find 25 of the best startups that I could find.
Okay.
And then at the same hotel where we had been doing some of the events, I rented a ballroom or two, and we put 25 startups in there, and we recruited, I remember it was 14 corporate sponsors who paid $1,000 a table.
Okay.
And then we had a decent email database, and at that point, people, this was 6-7 years ago, people really weren't doing Twitter much then. And,
right.
But we still managed to get 350 people to show up, and a couple members of the press, and some
That's
articles.
awesome.
It was, for us, it was the biggest thing they had done in 10 years or more. And so
wow.
that, and we couldn't get anybody to partner with us because everybody knew we were kind of stodgy and old and tired. And that event made people open their eyes. They're like, wow, what was that? And so that's kind of the turning point for the organization. And then we created a second event, and it was called Meet the Angels.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about Meet the Angels is in Florida, and perhaps it's like some of your other listeners, Florida's pretty spread out, and people here don't know where to go to find good capital sources. And because unlike some other states, we have 3 or 4 major metropolitan areas here, but they're all separated by this gigantic swamp that the rest of the country knows as the Everglades.
Sure.
And
sure.
so and so I thought, look, this is crazy. Instead of everybody running all over the state to find the capital, let's get all the capital in one room.
Sure.
And so we got 15 or 20 groups into one room and a couple of panels, and we had somebody sponsor a jump drive and put their corporate logo on it. And on that jump drive, every one of the groups that were pitching had to do a 5-page deck. And that deck said who they were, what their investment profile was, what verticals do they invest in and not invest in, how much money had they invested in the past year, what's their average size check, what's the range of the check size, what's the typical process, and who do people contact.
Sure.
And so everybody who came to that event walked out with that jump drive. Now knowing, okay, well, if I've got a healthcare related, startup, there's no point in me talking to this capital source because they don't do anything healthcare related. And
sure.
So in that event, we had 500 people show up for, and it was actually so crowded, it was a problem. And it really was.
A bad problem, though, right? Or,
no,
or a good problem to have? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it was good, but the people in the back were talking so much, we had to constantly kept saying, look, can the peanut gallery go outside? But I guess in a way it was a high class problem because
sure.
It meant that we had finally, we were starting to be relevant. And so then we did the expo again a couple of months later. And that year we had 23 area organizations partner with us. We had 39 startups exhibit. Not all of them were from Florida. 5 of them were outside of Florida. We had, 18 or 20 corporate sponsors, and we added a panel or 2 panels actually. And we had 600 people show up. We had every ballroom and every room, like not hotel room, but every event room in that hotel. And it was still crowded. And at that point, we really did have a high class problem. And I realized there was something there. And so I decided at that point, I was volunteering at this point for the organization and could no longer justify doing it.
Sure.
And so, and we were at a crossroads. The organization all of a sudden had gone in a year, not all of a sudden, but in 2 years had gone from being irrelevant to being so relevant that it couldn't actually handle its own workload. So and they didn't have the budget to hire an executive director, et cetera. So to shorten the story, essentially I took the event back and decided that I would fund it and produce it myself.
Sure.
And at that point, my wife actually encouraged me, a decision she may have now regret, by the way. But my wife said, you're pretty decent at this. Why don't you do something with it instead of just let it go because the organization can't do this anymore? And
sure.
so my thought was, look, I'm going to go big or go home. And so we decided to move it into a convention center, and we rented like the whole third floor of a convention center, which was a little more space than we needed. It was delusions of grandeur. And moved it into the convention center. I came up with the name SUPX, which is SUP-X, and people either think it stands for stand up paddleboard something or other, but SUPX does mean Startup Expo. And so we rebranded it and moved it in the convention center. And that first year, as you were there, and that first year we had about 1,000 people. And
it was huge.
Yeah, we had 1,000 people from like 23 states and 9 countries that year. So, and I've been this will be year 3 that we're doing here in July. So SUPX is my startup. It is I often say it's a very pleasant, ongoing accident.
I think a lot of good things kind of come out of something that you didn't really plan on, right? Like I think those are always the best and kind of most successful things. I think it's kind of funny, right? How that sometimes just plays out like that.
Well, if people are listening and heard the first part of my story, they're probably scratching their head as much as I am as to how I came to my full-time occupation, at least for 6 months of the year, is producing a very large national startup conference and really international to some extent, even though
sure.
The international visitors are small, but technically we're international.
Yeah.
It's an interesting path. It's my startup, like a lot of startups that are listening there. I'm not yet profitable if that profit includes paying the founder.
Sure.
And
sure.
But I'm, as a friend once described me, I'm kind of like a dog with a bone caught between my teeth, like you're not getting the bone. And
sure.
I really want to see if I can do it for a couple of reasons. I'm competitive and I want it to be successful, just because, like anything else I try, or most people try, they want it to be successful. And 2, I really like it, and I love what I do. And there's a lot of things I love about it, but you've met me and
yep.
I'm reasonably outgoing. So, the fact that I can get 1,000+ people all in one spot and they're having a great time excites me. Like, I really enjoy the fact that it's like an educational party and it's fun. And probably the most fun thing about it, and the thing that really inspires me to keep doing it, is, and this is selfish, I'll admit it, but I get to meet really intelligent, upbeat, smart, optimistic winners.
Yeah,
in
interesting.
Life. Winners in life from all over the world.
Sure.
And that is a positively reinforcing energy that is healthy to be addicted to, and I have the addiction. And I really extract something amazing from the people that I'm able to interact with, and it inspires me, and it's fun. We have a really fun event. I go to a lot of events. I like my own event, I'm honest. And we try to create great content where people can learn, and we try to have an environment where we attract cool people, and all of those people can learn and enhance whatever business they're in by intermingling. And it's really fun.
No, I 100% agree. I think the interesting thing too is like to just kind of reiterate your point. Like part of the reason I love doing the show so much is you get to talk to people kind of all over the world, kind of doing what they do and they're passionate about. And that kind of also that passion kind of rubs out on you. So I totally get that. And it makes a lot of sense. And the one thing, I've been to a ton of events too over the years. And the one thing that I noticed about SUPEX is everybody was like open to network. Like it's like if you made eye contact with somebody, you just like shook hands and started chatting, which a lot of networking events are kind of like everybody's kind of curled up in the corner and like on their phones, right? Where it wasn't not like that at all, right? Like I was actually surprised at how many people I met. And I think I've told you this before, like 6 or 8 months after the conference, like I was still interviewing people for the show that I met, at SUPEX. So it was a crazy good event for me from like even just like a networking kind of recruiting guest for the show.
And it pleases me so much to hear that, and I'm glad. That's exactly what we want. And,
sure.
I could transition and start telling you a little bit about how we go about doing that. If that's
no, I was just that was going to be my next question to you. Is like each year you kind of do things a little bit different. So do you want to maybe talk about what's on the agenda today?
Yeah, sure.
Or in July, I should say.
Yeah, sure. It's July 26th in Fort Lauderdale, by the way. And for the listeners, you can go to sup-x.org and learn more. But so we try to change the agenda significantly each year. And sometimes I have trepidation about doing that. Like almost every year since I started doing this, even when it was for the nonprofit, we had some sort of panel on raising capital. I mean, Let's face it, startups want to know how about raising capital. But
Sure.
I've decided not to do one this year.
Sure.
And the reason is every conference you go to has a panel on raising capital. Mm-hmm. And we tweak the agenda and the format every year, and just see what spaghetti sticks on the fridge and go with it. And
sure.
So we have been a 2-day event in the past, and we've had multiple tracks, and we've been in the winter. And this year we're a 1-day event with 1 track and plus some workshops, which I'll explain. And we're in the summer. And it's just to see if by changing the model, does it enhance the experience in some way? And so we play with the format. And then the other thing that we do is we try to assess the topics and make sure that they're still relevant. Now, it doesn't have to be bleeding edge, but we do want to be kind of leading, to an extent. So this year, we have a crypto blockchain panel, and
Sure.
And this year we have a cannabis panel,
Mm-hmm.
and crypto blockchain. A year ago it would have been cutting edge. This year it's still kind of a leading topic, and it's more relevant, just particularly because of what's happened on the crypto side. And I think the tension is also starting to shift a little bit to the overall efficacy of blockchain and not the quick money allure of crypto.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think it's a more permanently interesting subject instead of merely titillating, and which is also why cannabis is on the agenda this year.
Sure.
And, I've been a little reluctant, to be honest, to do a cannabis panel in the past, just for a variety of reasons. Would the sponsors accept it okay? What would my mom think? I mean, you could figure out whatever it is, the reasons are. But,
Sure.
But the issue, actually in Florida, there's legal complications. And so, but my thinking's evolved. It's, there's a more mature discussion around it. It's not simply a backdoor way of, for elites to, legally get their dope.
Sure.
There's more serious discussions to be had. Serious investors are interested. It's too big of a subject not to at least address at an event like ours. So it's front and center. It's an interesting topic this year. We're doing a panel on social innovation.
Sure.
Cool stuff going on there. We've got a panel on healthcare innovation, which is always cool, but it's really relevant to our Florida economy here. Even though we're a national conference, a huge percentage of the people that attend our event are from Florida, and that's healthcare is probably one of the 5 biggest verticals here in our state. So, and we have a couple other topics too. We have a keynote speaker that we'll soon be announcing, who's from your great country. But we're not going to announce him today. But
sure.
And you've met him, and then there's the opening forum, which I'm super excited about. So one thing that we do every year is we always start off with some sort of diversity-oriented forum, and that forum typically takes the majority of the morning.
Okay.
And the reason we do it is obvious. It's just some of these communities are underserved, underaddressed, and need more access. And so 2 years ago, that was a Women in Entrepreneurship Forum. And last year, we broadened that in response to some feedback for other communities. And so we made that a Diversity in Entrepreneurship Forum. And this year, it's what we're calling #Women for Women.
Okay.
And we're trying to make it the largest gathering of angel groups, seed series funds, and VC funds in the U.S. in 2018 that are focused on female founders and female entrepreneurs. And I'm really excited about it. It should be super cool.
Sure. No, I think it's great. I've the nice thing too is I've had some of the people obviously that are going to be there again this year actually on the show in the past, and some of them are doing really awesome things. Well, all of them are doing really great things. And the other thing that I think makes a lot of sense too is you got and get a lot of female there, period, right? From kind of the investor side, or they've done it themselves. They've sold companies. Like, I was actually really impressed by how, maybe close to 50-50 it was, so I think you do a really good job at kind of not, because traditionally tech conferences are, there's like a handful of women there, but you really had probably close to half.
So last year, your perception is close. Last year it was, I think, 60-40-ish. And that, someone who doesn't go to tech conferences might say, oh, well, that's not very good. Well, for tech conference, that's actually great. It's typically huge. It's a dude fest.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
So, and it'll probably even have a larger female participation this year because of #Women for Women. But
sure.
One of the cool things about #Women for Women is, there's a woman named Marcia Dawood who you know.
I had her on the show.
You met her at Super X the first year, and Marcia's she's been involved all 3 years, and Marcia's very accomplished and very cool. And she's an investor, and she's been involved in several funds, and she now runs 2 different funds that are focused on female entrepreneurs. But Marcia's also on the board of the Angel Capital Association, which is the largest trade association in the U.S. For angel groups. And I think there's something like 14,000 angel groups that are members, or some incredible number, or maybe that's the number of angels. But anyway, their representation is enormous. And she's the chair of their membership committee. She also chairs their discussion group on female-focused angel groups.
Sure.
And she's the chair of #Women for Women.
That's awesome.
And Marcia is helping us design the content and encourage, and recruit some of these female-focused funds from around the country to participate. So we've already got 8 or 10 such organizations committed, and we're hoping by showtime that's closer to 24 or so. And we're really excited about it and looking forward. I mean, the whole show should be a good time, but that's obviously a big part of it. Although someone asked me, is it a female-focused conference? It's not. But that's just the morning forum, but it is a big part of our programming.
Sure. No, but I think that's great. I think just having, I think the thing that people sometimes forget, even just like males forget, is a lot of startups are very much geared towards men. Not all, but there's a whole population, obviously like close to 50%, that I think guys like males and females could really benefit from maybe catering a little bit more to the female side of things, whether they're doing hardware, software, both, some sort of other product in another category, where I think we're obviously people are doing it, but I think there's a huge need and a huge market for a lot of new products, maybe geared a little bit more to females over males. Is that fair to say?
Well, yes, and I think another point. Look, I won't to the women in the audience. I will not mansplain this. I promise.
Okay.
but they know better than the guys do.
Sure.
If you look at the statistics, the percentage of venture capital that goes to women-founded businesses is some ridiculously low number. I don't the exact number. People, I hear all kinds of numbers, but it's typically in the single digits is what people throw out. So. And then there's correlations that funds that have women involved in the investment decision actually allocate more to women-founded and women-led ventures. Sure. And then there's other statistics that show that women-led ventures, or they're at some woman at the C level, for instance, those ventures in general outperform those that do not have a woman at say who's a founder at C level. So there's all kinds of reasons to do this, from social, like we should encourage more participation and more access, to the sheer economic, which is okay. Social issues aside, it's just a smart investment decision. So there's a bunch of reasons to do it, and we try to address those, and it should be great. The format for #Women for Women that morning is there's a keynote speaker who we'll soon announce as well, sure. And then there's a panel on the challenges of raising funds as a female entrepreneur, and then there's kind of an organized networking session where we make sure that the entrepreneurs in attendance actually get to meet the representatives from these various organizations, and we're still working on the exact format of that, but that sure. should be a cool connection opportunity separate from any networking that goes on in the larger event.
Sure. Well, and you guys also are doing a competition. So what exactly is it, and how can startups kind of get the most out of that?
Yep. So we do a startup competition each year. We'll probably end up selecting 35 to 50 startups to participate. Okay. Exact number depends on the number of applicants and just the kind of what we see, but we'll probably have about 35 or plus startups accepted. And the first place prize, we're giving all the money to the first place person this year, it appears, and it'll be $20,000 in cash and prizes. Nice. guaranteed, and that number may grow. That's just, it originally was 15, and now we have the ability to do 25, and I hope for it to be even more by showtime, but we're committing to 25.
Sure.
And so the format is, if they go online at sup-x.org and go to the competition button, just click on it and it tells you how to apply. But essentially, they have to buy a ticket to participate, and I'll explain why in a minute. They buy a ticket, then they send a note and say they've applied. Then we give them a Gust link and they submit their application. And then we sort through the applications at the end of May. And from the typically a couple hundred that apply, we'll select the 35.
Sure.
There'll be booth opportunities for those 35 so that they get to exhibit. And I'll talk about that in a minute.
Yep.
And then 5 that day are announced as the finalist, and they'll go on stage as the final event of SoupX and pitch before a panel of judges, and the judges will select the event winner, and we'll hand out the big clown check and run off to the bar to have the closing reception. So 2 questions that I want to preempt and ask myself, if it's okay, Kevin.
Yep.
Why do we make people buy a ticket?
Okay.
And the reason is, as I said, it's my startup, and we're thinly staffed. And when I say thinly, you're talking to the staff. And
that's awesome, though.
But I don't want to sit there and look at applications from someone in Singapore who has no intention of coming unless they know that they're a finalist.
Yeah, fair.
And so we want people who are serious about participating in the experience of SoupX to apply. And bear in mind, if you know you're going to attend, the tickets are right now during the early bird period are only $59.
Yeah, that's cheap.
So we are, as you know, we are purposefully an affordably priced conference. So that's why we charge. It's not to gouge people. It's to make sure that serious about participation, and to weed out those that are just lobbing something in, and we end up looking at 1,000 applications that are mainly, ideation or phase or something. So that's why we do it. And then
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I was going to ask about cost in a second, but you just kind of covered it. So I think the other thing that you touched on that's worth mentioning is you do have an exhibit hall, and obviously people exhibit in there. But what exactly is that? Because I got a lot of value out of that, just kind of talking to people and meeting people in there. I thought it was really great.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and it's a fun part of the overall experience. I mean, Expo is in our name, so we have about 100 exhibitors, and so 35, as I said, or so, 35-ish will be startups, and the rest will be corporate exhibitors, and then exhibitors from the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem.
Right.
So accelerators, co-work spaces, nonprofits devoted to entrepreneurship and the like. I mean, it's a festival for startups. So that's who makes up the exhibitors. And if you go to the website and click on exhibition opportunities, or I can't remember what the name of the button is, but there's sponsorship brochure in there. Yeah, there's a sponsorship brochure in there, and it's reasonably priced. There are sponsorships in there from, I think, $1,000 or $500 for nonprofits, all the way up to $20,000 or something. But to get a booth generally for a for-profit company, it's like $1,250, which is pretty reasonable for a one-day event with the kind of attendance that we have. But on the subject of booths, exhibiting, and startups, one thing that I do notice sometimes at our event and other events, and this is a lesson I'd like to offer to startups into attendance or listening, and that is, I think in relative to startup competitions that too often the startups involved solely focus on the size of the prizes and not enough on the value of the exhibition opportunity.
Sure.
And frankly, if they have a chance at any big event to get the booth, it doesn't matter what the prize is. I mean, if it's $100,000 and 50 people get a chance at it, well, your expected monetary value is $2,000. I'm promising you that booth or table's worth more than that.
Sure.
And that's just, it sounds so obvious, but so often I see people only look at competitions that have 100,000, 200,000, or whatever. I don't think it really matters for them. What matters is who's in the audience.
Yeah, totally.
And how good of an event is it? And it's not solely about meeting investors, but it's important to understand, that a decent number of investors show up, and we typically get about 20% of our audience as accredited investors. But you never know what potential partner you're going to meet, what potential partner, what potential, client / customer you're going to meet, or future employee. Or an attorney. Let's say you meet an attorney or accountant, and your inclination is, okay, I don't need to meet an attorney or accountant. You don't know who their clients are.
Sure.
And they do think about that. And so, all it takes is meeting the one right person, and that relationship capital. That's how I heard somebody refer to it once. Relationship capital.
Interesting.
That relationship capital is worth a lot, and I also think it's just an awesome opportunity, although it doesn't feel like it at times, to be asked 400 times in a day about your business. You get really efficient at it after a while, and that's good for you. So I'm a big fan of the exhibition opportunity for the startups. I just think it's an experience that some overlook, and we try to provide it knowing how cool it can actually be for them.
Sure. And is there any other advice that you'd give people to, kind of how to do a conference kind of properly? Because I think a lot of people, sometimes go and then they go to the 2 or 3 talks that they want to see and then just kind of check out because they're maybe kind of scared to go to networking or go to the exhibit hall and talk to people. But do you have any advice how they can kind of get the most out of SUBEX?
I think people interact with conferences based on their personalities. And so there are people that go to conferences and just go to panels. And it's particularly if there's a technically oriented panel and they're technically oriented, they go to learn.
Sure.
Or a workshop. And that's a really smart use of your time, and you're learning what is coming down the pipe for your respective area of expertise. That's smart. I, on the other hand, go to conferences to network. I
Sure.
like to meet people. And so I personally don't go to a lot of panels or speeches. I go and interact with all the exhibitors and then the people, et cetera. And then there's the healthy in between. So the two extremes are just panels and then people who just network. And then you combine as much as you like. I think some people are intimidated by networking as part of the issue too.
Totally.
And you and I have talked about this subject on other shows. There are better ways to network that take the pressure off you.
Sure.
First of all, you don't have to come out of an event with 50 business cards.
Yep.
Set a realistic expectation that if you were to meet 3 or 4 really cool people that day, it would be a great day. If you meet 50, it could be great if you have other purposes, but set realistic expectations and have an icebreaker, question in your pocket that's always good to go to. And it's not, why are you here? It's, have something, some good, question to ask. Oh, did you go to the panel? Did you enjoy it? Anyway, but icebreakers is always good to have. And I usually suggest standing within about 8 paces of the bar with a cocktail in your hand. It's great, and a smile on your face. You'll meet a lot of people that way.
Sure. Well, and I also think too, just kind of in my experience, is if maybe bring a friend if you're that's a little bit more outgoing, right? Because they'll haul you around and they'll introduce you, as well, right? Or
there are a variety of places in life, Kevin, that wingmen and cocktails are very, very appropriate.
Yeah, very much so. I 100% agree. I think, no, you're not wrong. You're right though. I've actually met a ton of people. You grab a drink and then, just start talking to somebody, right? That's also getting a drink. But I think the thing that I want to kind of reinforce again is like the times that I've been to the SUPEX, like there wasn't that awkward, like everybody was there to kind of network, right? And where I think people were just open to it, right? Where I've never been to another event where it was like that, right? And I'm not just saying that because like you're on the show, but like I truly mean that, where I met a ton of people just because like everybody was just kind of there to network. And even if you talk to somebody for like 30 seconds and neither one of you had really anything to add to what the other person was doing, because if that person was looking to raise or just meet investors and I wasn't an investor, it's just like, great to meet you, exchange cards and move on to the next person. That's not terrible either, right?
Yeah. I think part of that, honestly, is because a huge percentage of our attendees are Floridians, and they're generally friendly people. It's been my experience in living here. So, and they're pretty welcoming and relaxed. It is part of the South, and so I think that reflects on kind of the vibe people get. And then we do try to create a relaxed, fun vibe. It's not some snotty conference, and some conferences can be. It's not who's the coolest kid in the crowd kind of thing. It's about people having a great time and meeting and learning and just really advancing whatever it is they're into.
Well, and the other thing too, at least from my experience, is a lot of the speakers and investors and anybody that was kind of on panels or actually like up on stage actually went to the reception and the party, where I find like a lot of times you have a speaker just show up, do their talk, and then they're out and you never see them kind of before or after.
They're escorted escorted by bodyguards or their handlers quickly out the back door to their limo. Well, there's a reason for that. We don't pay our speakers.
Okay.
We don't have the budget. I mean, historically, I have funded this, and now we're funded by a nonprofit. And so, we've got budgets for, AV and lighting and stuff like that, but we don't have budgets for entourages and jets and stuff. And we don't pay speakers fees. So, anybody who speaks at SUPEX is coming because they want to be there. Either they recognize, hey, this is a great chance for me to get some publicity or to, enhance the knowledge of my product or whatever. It's that, and some of these people, they want that, but they also realize a lot of these people are successful at what they've done, and they do want to give back and help other startups. So we tend to get people who are much more open to intermingling because they're not getting paid 15 to 50 grand to show up and give a talk and then pop off in their jet. So,
which also keeps the cost down for tickets too.
Yeah, and so what I will mention again, I don't want to produce a startup conference where it's $1,000 for people to go to.
Yeah.
And so, you can get a ticket to SoupX if you're a student for $29. If you're a vet, it's $59. And our regular price general admission ticket is $99.
Yeah, it's cheap.
And I know it's a one-day event, but the quality of the content it's competitive. I mean, if you do in a business sense, look at other events. I think we stack up well, but we're way cheaper. And the reason is we want to be accessible. And we also, while a lot of our attendees are from Florida, we do get people from other states. And, I want the startup that's listening in Ohio or Kentucky, or, we've had them from the West Coast. I want a startup who really wants a cool event and learn and has a chance to exhibit. I want that startup to knowing that they're going to spend, if you think about it, probably close to $1,000 by flying there and getting a hotel room for a couple nights, et cetera. Sure. I don't want them to also go, and then I got to pay $1,000 for tickets and two of us want to go. It's, we don't have $5,000 in the budget for this. And so the focus of our event is the entrepreneur.
Sure.
Now, we want investors there. We love having them there, and we have great content for them there. But primarily we want them there because it enriches the experience for the entrepreneurs, and it's good deal flow for them, but they add to the experience. But the entrepreneur is the focus of our event, and therefore we try to make it accessible to them.
No, I 100% agree, Bob. I think that's really great. But sadly, we're out of time, so maybe let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about SoupX.
Sure, thanks. So they would simply go to sup-x.org, sup-x.org, and there's pretty much anything they want to know on the website. And I think there's a contact button on there somewhere. They could probably email me directly if they needed to. But that's where they'd learn more. And again, it's on Thursday, July 26th. There'll probably be some unofficial gathering or meetup the night before.
Sure.
But if the official program starts the next morning at 8:30, it's all day, and then we wrap it up with a closing reception. And there's a VIP party, and then that's a wrap.
Perfect, Bob. Well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be on the show, and we'll keep in touch, and I look forward to seeing you at SoupX.
Well, before we sign off, Kevin,
Sure.
The most important thing, you're emceeing the show.
That's correct. I will be there emceeing. So if not, you'll know two people there. If you come, you'll know me and Bob.
Can't wait to have you there. Good. Looking forward to seeing you, Kevin.
Me as well, man. All right. You have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. Also check us out on Facebook at Building the Future Show and follow us on Twitter at Building Show. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.